This is Michael Ostrolenk, and I'm speaking with Baylen Linnekin. He's Executive Director of Keep Food Legal. How you doing, Baylen?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me here.
Excellent, good. Welcome. Tell us about Keep Food Legal.
We are the first and only grassroots membership organization fighting for the right of people to grow, raise, produce, buy, sell, cook, and eat the foods of their own choosing.
Wow. Okay, let's break that down.
Sure.
Why do we need an organization to allow people to eat what they want to eat?
It's sad, actually, but we do need that type of organization. There are legislators at the local, state, and federal level who are clamping down on people's rights to do everything from, say, drink raw milk to eat French fries that are made in trans fats, to eat Happy Meals, to have chickens in their backyard, to slaughter their own animals, and a host of other things.
Well, wide variety of issues there. So you're completely for what you might call legal food or food freedom?
Yeah, food freedom, culinary freedom, farm freedom, all of those things sort of fall under the umbrella of what we're doing. And we don't think the government has a right to tell us what to eat or how to eat, except for some limited health and safety restrictions, which...
Well, let's jump into one of the things you mentioned. You mentioned raw milk.
Right.
And I know there have been some recent raids against raw milk producers,
right,
including kind of a big issue in Canada with the gentleman up there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some background on this issue, why the federal government and the state governments are interested, and what the battle's about?
Sure. Well, raw milk is illegal at the federal level in the United States. The FDA has banned the interstate transportation or sale of raw milk. So, for example, you can't be a farmer in, say, Pennsylvania and sell raw milk, even though it's legal within Pennsylvania, to someone in Maryland or D.C. And there's actually been a crackdown in that very instance. An Amish farmer had his farm raided. He had been supplying milk to people in the D.C. area, to a buyer's club, and the FDA, as part of a year-long sting, along with some U.S. Marshals and sheriffs, raided the farm. Now, that's one absurd example, but it certainly isn't the only one. Canada has a similar prohibition, and there's actually a gentleman who had been in a hunger strike recently with regard to that, and I guess I believe I'm current on this, had a meeting scheduled or perhaps even take place with the Prime Minister in Canada. I'm interested in this issue internationally, but I admit I focus more on the sort of domestic side of things.
So we had armed federal agents both investigating and then eventually doing a raid on an Amish farmer. Is an Amish farmer that sells raw milk a threat to national security? We're kind of in a close to $15 trillion debt crisis. Why are we spending this kind of money and time and effort on an Amish farmer?
The federal government loves to spend taxpayer money, and often on sort of frolics that make no sense whatsoever. This is one example. There was a raid, Rossum Raw Food Co-op in Venice, California, that's now been raided twice and shut down, most recently over the summer. Same thing, armed raid in this case. The previous raid had been videotaped. I think this one, they cut the cameras. And the premise is that people don't have a right, at least the federal government believes that, to consume raw milk, and that it's somehow unsafe because it can, and indeed sometimes does, contain pathogens, but so do things like, say, raw ground beef or raw pork or raw chicken, raw vegetables, deli meat. The USDA and the CDC have warned us against consuming deli meat if we don't first microwave it. So pathogens can appear in food. The government, I think, has a legitimate interest in warning us about those risks, but not in banning sushi or raw beef or whatnot, or certainly raw milk.
Okay, so besides the two raw milk raids that you mentioned, and then obviously the issue in Canada, what are some of the other food freedom issues that you're dealing with?
Let's see. Well, food trucks certainly, and their sort of freedom to operate has been under attack in various locations. Pretty much anywhere they're popular, there's an organized opposition. There may be more freedom in places like Portland than there is, say, here in D.C. or elsewhere in places like New York City, where there's some real crackdowns going on. But that's one area that we care about. Soda taxes, another area that we care about. They're ineffective from the research I've seen, and also unfair. Orange juice has as much sugar as a can of Coke. Why discriminate against soda? And frankly, I have no, sort of can of soda in that fight. So Coke or Pepsi or, some sort of Boylan's or local, small local soda. They all contain sugar. Sugar is a legal food ingredient, as it should be.
Now, the name of your organization is Keep Food Legal.
Yes.
Do you have a website?
We do. Oddly, it's keepfoodlegal.org.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of thought went into that.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're working against taxes on a specific kind of food.
Mm-hmm.
You're working to protect consumers' access to raw milk in this case.
Right.
What are the efforts? Are there a way, either the federal or state or local level, to restrict consumers' access to various types of food or to grow their own?
I guess one issue that involves both of those is in California, there's a foie gras ban that's kicking in on July 1st. That means that as of July 1, at least the argument goes that, and we hope to figure out a way to fight back against this, and there are some other individuals and groups who are also sort of struggling to figure out how to deal with this, but producers will no longer be able to raise ducks theoretically for the purpose of enlarging their liver, which is what foie gras is, or to sell if they produce, say, in New York State, which is, I think, the #1 producer in the country, or in France, or in Canada. So this is a serious issue. Foie gras is not, it's not steak, it's not hot dogs, it's not pork. It's sort of a niche food, an expensive food, but a food nonetheless that has a long history, certainly part of French culinary tradition. And if the foie gras domino falls, then what's next? Is it chicken and turkey? Is it pork? So keeping food legal means fighting for every food, regardless of whether I consume that particular food or whether those foods are popular.
Now, when you fight to keep these various foods legal, how are you doing so?
Advocacy, certainly, outreach, and also a whole lot of research. A lot of my research, in an academic-y sense, involves looking at the Constitution, and I'm trying to popularize the notion, which is true, based on my research, that food actually played an important role in, say, the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and sort of forming a lot of the protections that we have today. Jefferson wrote about British troops eating our food, and the British stealing our fish. In the Declaration of Independence, those were grievances specifically enumerated on his part. I think that sort of food history of the Constitution and of our earliest founding documents has been lost. I'm trying to remind America that we certainly had grievances against the Crown and have rights that are based on food.
So you're saying that we have a constitutional right to both consume and produce and possibly sell any kind of food we want within the limits, I guess you said, certain very narrowly defined safety limits?
Yeah, I mean, the 10th Amendment, I guess, health, safety, and welfare restrictions, and no right is absolute, whether it's speech or, the right to bear arms or, whatnot. Every right is subject to certain limitations that are ones that the government actually has power, and there are courts, obviously, that can decide that sort of thing. The Commerce Clause versus an individual right to do X. But yes, I am actually saying that we do have a fundamental right. No one has really successfully made that case yet, but that's my goal with Keep Food Legal over the next, say, a couple of years.
Excellent. Now, I know that there's a growing urban agriculture movement, both, I guess, a necessity considering the kind of economic straits we're in.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know, too, that there's a countervailing force in some cases, and I'm wondering if this is something you're working on, too, which are seeking to limit individuals within their communities to grow food on their own property, either for themselves or in a community setting for the community. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're aware of and work on as well?
This woman who in Michigan had been growing vegetables in her yard, the local authorities told her that was impermissible, that it was a violation of various city codes and that sort of thing. And she fought back, and I believe she was victorious, although I haven't kept up with it entirely. But the basic premise is that governments at the state and local level have been cracking down on the rights of people to have a chicken in their backyard or to grow certain things. It's needless, and it usually is because of sort of the NIMBY thing, or not in my backyard, or nosy neighbors. But I think anyone who wants to grow fruits and vegetables in their yard, on their own property, on their own time, should absolutely be permitted to do so. It's their property.
Now, if individuals watching this conversation, this interview, are themselves finding themselves in trouble, whether they're being visited by the feds or state health officials or county health officials or what it might be, what do you recommend they do?
Well, I'd love it if they let us know. We're a small group and we're relatively new, so I can't fight every fight, but I am interested in helping out their plight and perhaps directing them to legal assistance, or hearing out or suggesting that there might be others who are having similar issues, and trying to, I guess, keep food legal. One of our missions is to link up like-minded people, to get chefs and restaurateurs and farmers, consumers, producers, sellers, all these people on the same page when it comes to, if you protect my rights, I'll protect yours, in the same way that, say, the ACLU is an organization that protects the rights of a whole host of different people to do things in terms of speech and religion. Great.
And when people are interested in contacting you, how would they go about doing so?
They can contact me through the Keep Food Legal website, and I'm really good about writing back within mere hours.
Excellent. And one more time, the URL?
Yes, www.keepfoodlegal.org.
Great. Thanks, Baylen.
Thanks very much, Michael. Cheers.
Awesome.
Good times.
Just thinking about, let's just listen to you